So welcome to Fun Activities with Data to close out the academic year. The inspiration for today's webinar is sort of that time period as you approach the end of the school year, where you might not be as beholden to the demands of your structured curriculum as normal, and sometimes you have a little bit of extra time to slot in something that is educational, but something that is also fun. And sometimes at the end of the year, students can be tired, and it's nice to give them something that's a little bit of a change of pace to work on. And today, I really have two suggestions for you. Both of them are things that you can riff on and take in a lot of different directions. Both of them are not necessarily things that you have to do with DataClassroom, but DataClassroom certainly lends itself well to working on both of the activities that I will show you. So with that, I'm just going to kind of jump into it here and say that with these fun activities, I'm going to go over two kinds of activities. The focus is really on data literacy and data science skills rather than any specific subject area. I think if it's really important for you to hit a specific content, you would be able to tailor these to a lot of different content. But the examples that I'm showing are not really, hemmed in biology or life science or earth and space science, or even statistics. Really, they're kind of things that I think will be of interest, and they focus more on the skills of data analysis, manipulating data sets, data visualization, these sorts of things. So these two activities are, the first one is exploring change over time with Google Trends data. So looking at change over time data in terms of what has been searched on Google. And if you haven't played with Google Trends before, I'm going to introduce you to it and kind of show you how you can play around with those activities and how you can build a student activity around it. And the second activity that I'm going to show you is what I call analysis and interpretation improv. And so this is an activity where students are forced to think about what data might be telling them when they really have no idea what the data actually are. And we'll show you how to execute that. And we'll actually do a few practice rounds of that as well. So first, we'll take the exploring change over time with Google Trends data. And this activity can be an intro into the process of manipulating and cleaning data. And I will say this activity can be quite challenging if you make it 100% open-ended. So if you really, are looking for an activity that might last you, 2 full class periods and maybe even additional time, this could be it. If you only have a shorter time available, you might want to scaffold this down a little bit more. And so students are doing less independently, but there's really a lot of scope for, how difficult you make this based on how independent you make it for your students. So in this exploring change over time with Google Trends data, one way that you could do it, and this is just kind of how I'm going to model it for you all today, is you could work through a DataClassroom example. So finding a data set in DataClassroom that was collected through Google Trends, showing students how to kind of work through it, look at the change over time, maybe make comparisons between groups over that time period. Then the second step, I think, would be to, if you are going to have them collect their own data sets that they're interested in, you would introduce Google Trends to them and give them at least a little walkthrough of that interface. And that's what I will do for you. And then you would cover the data formatting for a Google Trends data set. So once you pull it out, more than likely you'll have to do a little bit of data formatting to it. And this is a place where I think if you're doing the data formatting for students, you can make this go much more quickly. But if you really want them to think about these kind of core data science skills of manipulating data, reformatting data, reshaping data, this can be a good opportunity to do that. The nice thing about it is all the Google Trends data will pretty much come out in the same format. So as you're coaching multiple students to do their data formatting to make it into tidy data, you'll essentially be having them do the same things over and over again. So with that, the first thing I suggested is working through a DataClassroom example, and there's 3 of them that I've included here. One of them is called Spider-Man, Witches, and Stranger Things in Data, and it's Google search data on popular Halloween costumes. And that one has a fully fleshed out assignment that goes with it. So there is a student-facing assignment. You could potentially just give students that and say, okay, I want you to work through this, and then we'll discuss solutions at the end. There is also a data set called Sauce Search, and it's looking at Google Trends search data for different sauces like hot sauce, Alfredo sauce, spaghetti sauce, and it's looking at those 20 years of search data for those. That is a raw data set. And so we have a new category of data sets within our resource library, which we mark as raw, where there is not a complete assignment for those data sets, but all of the variables are defined. There's background information included, and then students can decide what direction they want to take it in. So those are set up to be worked with and require a little bit more student independence. And so both Sauce Search and objects launched into space over time per country, that is also a raw data set. So Sauce Search and objects are raw data sets, and Spider-Man, Witches, and Stranger Things are fully completed assignments that are ready to go. I want to actually just kind of walk through an example, and I'll kind of show you some of the things that I did to a data set that we collected with Google Trends. Show you how we melted it, we converted dates, we got rid of unnecessary rows, and sort of the bullet points there are the very specific things that we did to get ready for those. So if you'll just bear with me for one second, I'm just going to switch over to Google Trends for a second. Or actually, maybe I'll start out by showing you one of those examples in DataClassroom, and maybe we'll go through the one that is the most ready to go, the one that is the most pre-made, and we'll just kind of go through this data set for a second. So this is Spider-Man, Witches, and Stranger Things in data. It is Google search data going back to January 1st, 2007. And there is a student-facing assignment here. And I'm just going to give you a look at this for a second. But it gives the background on this. And it tells you how the data set was collected. There is a link to Google Trends in there. So if you do want to use this as a jumping off point to explore Google Trends, it tells you what the variables are. And then it gets into the activity where they're looking at the fluctuations in these data over time and trying to explain what might be causing those, thinking about different events in media and pop culture that were going on. And so just to kind of build the core graph for this, they're looking at this search rate per million Google searches, and they see all these data points arrayed like this. And then they're spreading these out over the time period. And I'm going to take away the connecting lines for a second. Then they'll look at these data over this time period. But then what they'll do with this data set is they'll break these out by these different costume related search terms. So if we do this, we can see the purple is all searches for witch, the gold is searches for Spider-Man, and the teal is searches for Stranger Things. If we go ahead and connect these data, we see these patterns here. And And I'm going to go ahead and even just hide the dots and just look at the lines. But we see that these data are almost periodic in their fluctuation up and down. And as students explore these data, what they will see, and you can see this when you hover on individual data points, that all of these big peaks happen to be in October because these are people searching for Halloween costume ideas. And you can see the popularity of these things, comes in trends, and you can see some things that were, non-existent in the early part of the data set, like Stranger Things. They start appearing here in October of 2016 as the show became popular or was released and became popular. And so they work through this data set to look at trends over time. This is just an example. All of the questions and instructions for this one are ready to go. So you could have students work through this one. If you want to take this activity one step further and let them explore their curiosity with Google Trends, I'm going to go ahead and show you how that works. So this is trends.google.com, and it allows you to search for a term, and then you can add some filters to it, searching by country. You can search worldwide. You can, so you can, there's different ways to filter the search. You can filter by time period. They go back, all of them go back to 2004. You can look in specific categories. So you can look in like arts and entertainment, or auto and vehicles, or beauty and fitness. And then you can also define what kind of search. Is it a web search? Is it a Google image search? Is it a news search? Is it a shopping search, etc.? And I asked my kids what I should use as an example for this. I said, what would kids want to talk about if something was fun? And my kids are 9 and 11. And so they said video games. They said video games are the thing that they wish they could talk about in their school lessons, but you could pick anything. And so I started saying, okay, well, what are popular video games? And they said Roblox. So I add Roblox as a search term, and you can see it outputs this graph, and it's made a data set for us, but it's showing Google searches of Roblox over time. And so we can see this. And then I said, okay, well, what are some other popular video games? And my oldest said Fortnite. And so we can then layer that on. And now we have the data. Now we're looking at the data for Fortnite in red. We're looking at the data for Roblox in blue. And we can see where Fortnite emerged, and just how popular it got. And we could add, I'm going to add a couple other popular video games. We'll look at Minecraft. We can see that searches for Minecraft reached some staggering heights there and stayed high for quite a while, and still remain fairly high. We could, add something like Among Us in there, and maybe even let me do one more, and maybe we'll do like Grand Theft Auto. So if you're not a video game person, I think these were all video games that, according to my kids at least, achieved a high degree of popularity at different times. And you can compare the popularity in those search terms over that time period. Now, if you want to get this as a data set, and you could do an activity where students just analyze this data here. But if you wanted them to work with the data a little bit more, you could have them do the work with the data set. And if you go to this button right here, you can download these data as a CSV file. And I've already done that, and I've brought them into, I opened up this CSV in Google Sheets, and I'm flipping over to the original data. This is what the data look like originally here. And so they're not quite in what I call tidy format. And I don't know why Google chose to not have them come out in that way, but they haven't. But you can see some things that make this data not in the traditional tidy format. Things like there's a couple of extra rows up here at the top. Things such as all of these number of searches. These are really all values of the same variable, and that variable is how many searches there occurred, or number of searches. And then there's also another variable, which is, what was the search term or search term. And that's spread across these 5 different categories. We see the Grand Theft Auto, the Fortnite, the Roblox, the Minecraft, the Among Us. And step by step, I tidied these data up. And this is the process you could have students work through. If you really know what you're doing, you can do this in about 5 minutes. I imagine if you have novice students, this will take quite some time to work through. Step 1 that I've done here, you can see I got rid of the extra columns that were at the top. Then for step 2, trying to remember for step 2, all of those less than and greater than signs, they were all less than signs. So any search that was less than 1, and I believe these units are millions, I got rid of all the less than signs just by doing a command F search like this. And I went to the more options, and I found those, and then I replaced them with blanks. So it just removed all of those. Then in step 3, step 3, what did I do for step 3? I'm not sure what I did for step 3, to be honest with you, but step 4, which is the final step, at this point I had melted the data down so that all of the search terms were in a single column, and then the number of searches were in a single column, and then a time in months since January 2024, I made a new column, because when we convert that to a number, it will be much easier to work with. And this last step, this melting, I did this in DataClassroom, and I just want to show you how I did this here. So if I go to DataClassroom and I go back to my dashboard, and I go to the import data set from your own data, this bring data into DataClassroom, and I'm going to fetch this data from a spreadsheet on Google Drive. So I'm going to click the fetch, and I'm going to go back over to my spreadsheet, and I'm just going to grab the URL, and I'm going to paste the URL in there, and I'm going to fetch these data in. And it gives me the option of, which of the sheets do I want to bring in. I'm going to call it the step 4. And I'm going to show you how I did that melting to get all those search results into the same column. So when I brought that data in, and I'm going to choose a type for each of these searches. In millions, that's a numeric variable. Search term, that's a categorical variable. Time, that's a numeric variable. And then month, we're going to just call this as info, because it's not in a numeric form, so we're not going to analyze it mathematically. And I'm going to save that. This left-hand toolbar brings out some lesser used tools, but things that are very useful in certain situations. And if we go to this advanced menu, we see this little icon of the little drip, and this is the melt function, and it helps get this data into tidy format. And so if I go in here, oh, sorry, I can't, this is already melted. Let me reload this and get the unmelted format. My apologies. So like I will take I'll take step 3, and we will melt these data. My mistake. So each of these, and now what we see is we have each of these columns as separate columns, right? The data for Among Us, the data for Minecraft, the data for Roblox, the data for Fortnite, the data for Grand Theft Auto. And if I go over to that advanced menu on the left again, and I grab the melt function. Here it will allow me to decide what I want to melt together, the columns that I want to combine. And so I want to combine Grand Theft Auto, Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, Among Us. And it's telling me I have different types because I've miscategorized Grand. So I'm gonna go ahead and make that a number again. There we see that. Now I'm gonna go back to my melt, and this time I'm ready to do it for real. I'm gonna go ahead and pick the columns that I want to combine: Grand Theft Auto, Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, Among Us. And when I click next, it will let me create a new column name for this, whatever this category is. So it knows these are the categories, and I will say these were my search terms, and name of the value column. These are searches, and I believe the unit is millions. And now I'm going to click this purple convert in the corner. And when I convert this, now it is melted. It's just telling me what columns it combined. You can have a chance to undo it here if you want, but you can see we've combined those columns. And so all of those searches are in a single column, and all of the search terms are in a single column. And now if we want to start graphing this, we can explore this, and we can look at, number of searches, and we can look at that across time, and we can define those by which search term they were. And, we can do things like connect dots with lines, and then we can do a lot in changing the appearance. We can make those point sizes a heck of a lot smaller. We can even make them go away entirely. Here, I'm just shrinking them down for a second. And hold on a second. My computer is lagging here with my zoom on, but I could hide the dots. There, I've made them very, very small, or there I can make them go away completely, and we can look at the data there. So this can be a good exercise, again, if you really do want students to get that practice in manipulating those search terms. Manipulating those data sets and working with them. Sorry, I was distracted momentarily because my 9-year-old walked in. She's home from school. So that's kind of an example, and I'm going to go back to the slides here. You can see that's one activity that you can do. It can be quite independent in how you let students work on that. The next activity is something that can be a little bit more teacher-led, but still gives students some room to do things individually. There's definitely room for creativity with this activity. This is what I call analysis and interpretation improv, and it's partly inspired by a game called Charty Party. And if you've never seen this game, if you are a data person, it gives you the x-axis, but you have cards, and you go ahead and place them on the y-axis, and then the group votes on which are the best. It's a little bit like Cards Against Humanity, if you've ever played that, but it's much more nerdy and much less inappropriate. You could totally play Charty Party in a class. But this sort of version of this activity, as I do it, is each student or team gets a graph with no axis labels, and students make up the axis labels. So you give them a set amount of time, and I recommend giving them a limited time. So there is some pressure to think about this. Maybe say, okay, your student group can have 5 minutes to make up the axis labels. And in addition to making up the axis labels, I want you to quickly prepare a story for the data and present it. So thinking about things like, why were these data collected? How were these data collected? What were the research findings that these data support? And what are your conclusions, and how confident are you in those conclusions? Much like you would do when you're analyzing a real data set, But then at the end, you will reveal the real data of what was the data set that they were looking at in graphical form. There are a lot of variations with this. You can do things like you can give them the x-axis, but not the y. You could give them the y, but not the x. You could, you could reveal things slowly. You could do this individually. You could do this in groups. You could do this with a really short time limit to really make them think on their feet. But let's go ahead and I'm going to have this group play this. So looking at these data, and if you are a really hardcore DataClassroom user and you recognize this from an activity, don't spoil it. Don't give us what the real data are. But this is all you can see about these data. You have a group of data points above no and a group above yes. You have a bar graph sort of probably highlighting a median there, and you have some error bars. But let's go ahead and drop into the chat what could be, or if you feel like saying it verbally, you can unmute yourself. But give us what's the fake story behind these data? Where did they come from? What are they showing? What do we have here? We have a no group and a yes group, but what was the question? Who are the test subjects? Who are the respondents, or what are we measuring? What story can we make up here? Have you ever cut school? No and yes. I like it. What are in that scenario, what could the two different colors be? Who is the red group? Who is the yellow group? Correct prediction on Groundhog Day. Great, great. We get, what else could this be? What's the numeric aspect of it, right? Because it's implied that something is measuring here. Yeah, number of people belonging to a political party in a class. Sure, it could be that, right? But you got kind of two variables to account for. We don't really know what's on X other than that's broken up into these groups of no and yes. And then we've also got whatever is on Y. And it looks like it's numeric because it looks like we have error bars, right? So there's some measure of confidence around that measure of central tendency there. So let me reveal what this one actually was, and then we'll go through another one. So this one is from a DataClassroom activity. And for those in the UK who might not follow American football, I apologize for not having a worldwide definition of football in here. But this was did the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions for this past year, did they play better when Taylor Swift was in attendance? And so the y-axis is measuring the Kansas City Chiefs total yards of offensive production in a game. And the crazy thing is these are the real data. And it looks like it's actually statistically significant at a 0.03 level that the Kansas City Chiefs did gain more yards in the games when Taylor Swift was at attendance. She did not attend all the games this year. She was famously on her massive worldwide tour, so she had to miss quite a few games. But this is the story behind the data. And so I think you see where we're going with this activity. You can pull just about any data set and do this activity by hiding the axis labels, asking students to come up with a story. Let's take, yeah, well, we can take this one. So what's the story behind these data? We're looking at a distribution. What do we have here? What could the story be? We don't know what X is. We don't know what Y is. From the format, we can kind of assume that it's frequency of something, that it's because it's a histogram. It's put things into bins, and it's comparing size of those bins. But what are those bins? What could they represent? COVID infections over months, right? Okay, could be, could be. Size of a fish caught at a local reservoir. Sure. Good biology, life science example there. What else? What else could it be? One of the keys to this game too, how many cups of tea do you brew from one tea bag? Percentage of respondents on x-axis and number of brews. I like that a lot. One of the things that is can be really fun about this game is how elaborate you get students to be in their presentation, and really try to get them to present it with confidence, like they're sort of, they're delivering something very serious. And how elaborate they get with their creative story, that's what really makes this game fun, where they're pretending to be the experts, but it's on something that's completely fabricated or made up. This actually is a distribution of salary from NBA basketball players, so this is another somewhat sports related example, and you can see the distribution. There are, at the time of this data set, there were 4 players who are making over $40 million a year. And most of the players were making less than $5 million a year, which is still an awful lot of money. But you can see, what this distribution looked like. We are just about out of time, but I just want to show you really quickly. I had 2 more examples that you are free to use. I will share the slides with you, as well as anyone who wasn't able to attend live, but anyone who registered will get these slides. This one is, again, looking at, these kind of frequencies of occurrence of something. And what this is actually, this is number of Spotify plays of Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas, separated by country. She is extremely popular in Scandinavia. I had no idea. So this is another data set. Again, you can make up any story for it. This one is, so we've got a scatter plot showing an upward trend here. And this one is a good biology example. This is the use of penicillin and the occurrence of penicillin-resistant bacteria in different European countries. This is a data set in DataClassroom, you can actually split this out and look at what the countries are if you are doing this activity. This is another, kind of fun one, looking at distributions here. You've got 2 groups, and then you've got proportions across these 2 groups. And this one is hair color of comic book superheroes compared by gender. An awful lot of female superheroes have red or blonde hair, much more than the males, which is kind of an interesting finding in this data set. This is also a data set within DataClassroom if you want to play around with it. I guess I do, before we wrap up, I just want to see if anyone has any questions. I've just kind of taken you through 2 activities that I think are, might be a good fit for you around this type of time of year. But are there any questions from the audience before we part ways for today? Well, with that, then I will say thank you for joining me, and hope to see you on another webinar in the future.